from Abuja.
It's all about the human struggle to raise the level of living. That's what it's all about. I'm Magnus Packle, and this is Magnus Packle GVA. I appreciate you being a part of our show. Surprisingly, there are people who keep on saying that Africa does not get affected by global economic crisis or even normal global economic trends. Typically, analysts who choose to be ignorant of Africa and what it has to offer, or who are simply too lazy to get information about Africa, say this. Please do not allow yourself to be a victim of this notion. That notion is false. Africa is connected to the global economy. However, because macroeconomic management has generally improved across Africa, it has been able to show decent resiliency in recent times when contagion has spread. During the global financial and economic crisis that started in 2008, oil prices plunged from a peak of over $145 per barrel in July of that year to around $35 per barrel in early 2009. This is a decline of well over 300% and was a significant jolt to countries like Nigeria, Angola, Libya, and Gabon, among others. During the same period, natural resource prices crashed, dramatically reducing the fortunes for countries like Namibia that produce copper, for example, as copper prices tumbled from over $9,000 per ton in 2008 to an average of just around $3,400 per ton in the first quarter of 2009. What all of this means is that Africa is well connected to the world in every way and must ensure it is globally competitive and resilient to contagion. One way to do this is to diversify its economy and thereby be able to lift the level of living for its people by engaging more and more of them in the economic development process. Up next, benefiting from the African generational waves abroad. But before that, ever thought about this? Why are rainmakers poor? There is evidence that the rainmaking practice has gone on for thousands of years in Africa. The Madi people of northwestern Uganda are a perfect example of a thriving African tribe in rainmaking, revered all the way among the neighboring Eastern Congo tribes. In many parts of Africa, even educated elites on occasion appear to look for rainmakers to stop the rain when they have events in the rainy season. If rainmakers can actually stop the rain, why are they poor? Certainly, I have never seen a rainmaker, but neither have I heard of a rich one. If they can stop the rain, they ought to be rich. It seems that the demand for rainmakers is weak and secret, as people buying their services avoid revealing their identity, fearing the embarrassment that can come from one of two things. One, that they are fetish worshippers, and two, that they are gullible to believe such unproven signs. Bottom line, if you ever see a rainmaker, he is likely to be poor. Even so, let our universities see if we can scientifically investigate their technology. Perchance, there has been something there after all. Otherwise, elites that are tepidly patronizing rainmakers may do well to assist them in exploring a more reliable way of making a living. Our hidden economics for you. Africans in the diaspora have a key role to play in the development of the continent. Africa needs them for investments in business and involvement in civil society, health, technological advancement, or as a unique bridge between the people of Africa and the world at large. But this may not be achieved without a forum or platform to encourage and engage these talents abroad. Africans in the West have their potential for Africa mainly in what I have defined as generational waves. What is also interesting is that the third wave, the children of the second wave, are going to be of even more potential than their parents. But if we cannot engage their parents, what hope is there to reach this very important third wave? Consider that among the second and third waves are possible senators, congressmen and women, top business people, and global leaders and champions in all walks of life. Africa cannot afford to not find out more about these waves and how they can be of impact across the land. Recently, I visited with 3 very enterprising young people of African ancestry in Dallas, Texas, all of them in their 20s. It was very revealing how they, on their own, were thirsty for the opportunity to connect more meaningfully with Africa. Sumbola, Karte, and Timothy were pleasant to talk to. Mr. Timothy Musamba is of Kenyan parents and is a graduate of computer science, but also pursues a career in the movies as an actor and producer. Mr. Karte Abote's father is Ghanaian, his mother an African American. He is a graduate of business administration and pursues a career in the financial markets, while also being very successful in music and video productions. Dr. Sumbola Ashimi is of Nigerian parents. She is a neuroscientist and works at the prestigious University of Texas Southwest Medical Health Center in Dallas. Let us meet them. And I want the young people like yourselves to also realize that there is tremendous opportunity. Africa is the next frontier that is really opening up in the world today. The Chinese have long recognized this and are very active on the continent. I mean, obviously the Europeans have been very familiar with Africa for the longest time. And I think that you are good ambassadors for America. There's a great relationship now between the United States and Africa. And you guys can serve as very active in the vanguard of the effort to try to, to bring resources to flow, between Africa and the United States. Right now in the United States, I reckon that that we have upwards of 2 million people of African descent that have come either as immigrants or have been born in the U.S. And from the censuses that have been done, well over 3% of all the new immigrants into the United States are from Africa. So that is a significant number of people that can then ultimately work to have an impact on things that happen in this country. But most of all, we're looking for how we can open up space, build opportunities from people like yourselves, so that we generate a win-win situation between Africa and the United States. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Musamba, and then I'll go that way, and then we'll start to kick it off from there.
First, Dr. Paco, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me and to be a part of this discussion. I think it's a very important one. And I think, one thing that I've noticed about our generation who's grown up in the States is we have a mentality and an expectation from our parents who come from a cultural background. Then us growing up here as Americans, it's almost like a hybrid situation where we're conscious of what needs to be done and things that, we have higher standards that we hold ourselves to in terms of the opportunity that we have here. I have a lot of family back home who wasn't fortunate to be born here, like myself, cousins who are my age. And so just being a part of that and growing up with that mentality, it gives us a sense of responsibility, and that's something that I've really kind of, taken hold of my life and the things that I'm doing.
Mr. Abota, now I understand you're into music and music production and all that. What's that? What's that all about? What are you doing there?
Yeah, and I want to first, start off by saying thank you for the opportunity. I really feel like, and me and Mr. Musamba, we talk about this all the time, being able to create opportunities for, our roots, and also here in America. So I want to thank you for that opportunity. I do music production. We all have particular skills, that God has blessed us with, and with hard work and dedication, if we tap into those things, it can become a wonderful thing. And music is definitely one of mine.
You've been to Ghana? Have you been to Ghana?
Yes, I've been.
What was your?
It was an amazing experience. You have so many emotions. You want to see the country that you have roots from. You want to see it prosper at the same time. You have ties back here in America, and you want to see both places, me being half African American and me being African, you want to see both places prosper so much. So going back there and just seeing the potential opportunity there, the potential, you want to see that actually become a reality there.
Matter of fact, we just were at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center visiting with Dr. Ashimi. And I was just really impressed with what you guys are doing there. First of all, I know this is a historic medical center, one of the best in the United States. And to have you as somebody of Nigerian heritage, a young person working there with a PhD and all that, I was just really impressed talking to you there. Well, what happens there at the Southwestern Medical Center, and what exactly do you do in the facility there?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having us here to discuss these important issues. But as far as what happens at UT Southwestern Medical Center, we're a combination of a research facility, a medical school, a hospital, as well as a physical fitness and physical therapy institution. So we kind of put all of those aspects together. We have Parkland, which most people are very familiar with, Zell Lipshe, as well as St. Paul, that are working hospitals and children's. And we have cutting edge research going on there. We have the T. Boone Pickens building, the SAY building, which is houses a lot of the psychiatry departments, which is where I am, as well as the Bass Foundation and the Hammond Center.
Because you're a neuroscientist.
I'm a neuroscientist by trade. I did all of my work in depression, all of my PhD work in depression, looking at different aspects of it. And currently I'm doing work with eating disorders, so I've kind of shifted over into more clinically translatable research.
I know that. Do you see people depressed? Are Nigerians depressed? Do they look depressed to you?
They don't look depressed. That doesn't mean we don't have depression in Nigeria as well as other African countries. People just aren't very educated on what depression is. I mean, everybody goes through periods where they feel depressed, where you feel down, you just want to stay in bed all day, or you're unhappy, you don't want to, hang out with your friends and your family. That's very common. But to say you're clinically depressed is when you cannot pull yourself out of that state. And I'm sure there are many people in African countries that suffer from this and they don't know how to get help. They're told not to talk about it. They're told to fix it on their own. There's nowhere for them to go and seek help. And it's just seen as a taboo. We've heard of several instances of psychiatric breaks, with schizophrenia and bipolar that are just kind of swept under the rug because it's this big thing that nobody likes to talk about. But it definitely exists in African communities, African American communities. It's everywhere.
When have you ever been to Kenya?
Yeah, I've gone quite a few times.
Okay.
Last time I was there, I believe, 2 years ago, and I'm going back in spring.
Wonderful.
And definitely looking at doing some business endeavors now that I'm in school, looking at really progressing and opening up some opportunities that can be made available. We're willing to not just live and be comfortable here, in the States or wherever, but we're willing and want to help our people. And I think that's going to be a big shift, and we're ready. I'm ready.
Yeah. I like Ghanaian music a lot myself, and I imagine that you've listened to a few Ghanaian music. Is there anything that you're thinking down the road of doing there with some Ghanaian music, or even artists back there in Accra, say?
I think one of the things that I personally try to accomplish when I make music is to be able to reach out to a mass amount of people. So what that means to me is I have to be true to myself. I have to be able to provide people what they want to listen to, and I have to be able to do it to multiple types of people, multiple types of sounds. So if it's infusing the European sound with the Ghanaian sound, with the Nigerian sound, with the American sound, I feel like that's what the main goal is. It's to create something that's powerful enough to reach many people.
What do you think first that you think you could bring from your experience and your work as a neuroscientist, in addition to just other general areas of interest for you for economic development?
Well, my huge passions are education and availability of resources. So my sister and I have always talked about opening a big, medical research facility.
What does your sister do?
My sister is MD. She has an MD, and she's currently doing a residency in gynecology and obstetrician. So we've always, wanted to open a facility in which they had first world cutting edge research and medicine available to them for no cost. I think one of the hugest disparities is in healthcare in African countries, Nigeria one of them, and we felt that if we could open a type of facility where it was staffed by doctors that were trained both here in the States, in Europe, as well as in other African countries, and have researchers and have different types of research going on, it could really make a difference in Nigeria as well as other countries. There's a hospital in Thailand that is one of the biggest international hospitals in the world. And they are now having, I think 85% of their patients are not from Thailand. They're from the States, from Europe. And it's because they have cheaper health care and they have, cutting edge science and medicine going on there. And it's gotten to a point where now Americans are comfortable going to a foreign country to have surgery and to have these medical procedures done. I think it would be
because it's cheaper.
Because it's cheaper,
Yeah.
and because the doctors there
Good.
were trained here in the
Yeah.
States, have worked here in the States, and have gone back to their country.
Yeah.
I think it would be amazing if we could have something like that in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Ghana, in many different African countries, because as you've said, we have so many trained, skilled doctors, pharmacists, researchers, everyone. And, my dream would be to have, a school back in Nigeria and here
Yes.
for, the underprivileged children here, because we were given so many opportunities. Not everybody is given that. Even though America is supposed to be the land of opportunity, we know that there are several children who are not given the same type of education as, people in more affluent parts of the United States. So I've always wanted to open like a boarding school for girls and maybe eventually, branch it out to boys, kind of in the middle school to high school ages, where it's really pivotal, where you're making huge waves in what you're learning and what you want to do, and give them the opportunities to have all of this education that kids in the more affluent areas are, as well as go to the museums, go to the musicals, go to the theater, and do things that they might not normally get to do in their neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So kind of give back to the community here that's
Yes.
provided for us, as
Absolutely.
well as back home.
Yeah. And I'm happy and proud of you guys, that you look like you understand exactly what's happening over there in Africa, and you understand your stake and your role as a U.S. citizen, but with roots in Africa, of what you can do to try to, work to help raise the level of living in Africa and bring it to where, as I said, we'll be able to trade and, build value and have a win-win situation for all. Quite often, people have talked of reparations from the West that should be made to African Americans for having been taken into slavery and for centuries of bondage. A similar argument has also been made for reparations to Africa for the depletion of the population and vitality of Africa as a result also of centuries of slave trade. Some people had even said that Africa's debt to the West should be forgiven as a way of making reparations for the destructive effects of the era of depletion and plunder. I'm not sure that anyone should waste time entertaining such fantasies. I believe we have in the palms of our hands the ability to repair Africa of the damage and tragedy of the slave trade. As I will say it now, and very boldly, Africa may never achieve its full potential in development until there is a solid engagement of its lost population. I believe that just as American Jews are resolute and fully primed in their commitment to the development of Israel, African Americans will also be critical in the final big push that will transform Africa and bring it to parity with the industrialized world. However, this is not going to happen unless and until Africa begins to actively and constructively engage its people in America. I applaud the great work that literally every African government is doing in this regard, where in many cases they have set up diaspora offices and organizations. At the Economic and Business Strategies, EBS, we have developed a strategy by which every community and government can build and strengthen their own designs in African generational waves concept. African leaders should be conscious of the importance of engaging our talents in the diaspora, giving them a sense of belonging and recognition in order to foster continuous waves of African generational enterprise. Surprisingly, mostly from only first wavers, worldwide, Africa is already getting huge amounts in remittances, with Nigeria, for example, receiving about $10 billion in 2010 alone. Sudan got about $3.2 billion. Kenya received $1.8 billion, while South Africa got $1 billion. But let us note this. Africa may not ever be able to achieve its potentials until her people come home or are actively involved. John Williams wrote the theme song for the movie Amistad, titling it Dry Your Tears, Africa, Your People Come Back to You. Indeed, we may not be able to dry our tears until our people come back to us. Not by returning en masse to Africa, but by being engaged by Africa wherever they are. In the African generational waves, the first wave must create a second wave, and the second wave must set up a third wave. It is the positive tsunami of the third wave that will transform Africa. Already from the first wave, there are scientists, successful business people, and leaders that are making or can make a great positive impact with Africa. The second wave that is just forming is full of promise, as we have just seen. And its impact, if well coordinated and harnessed, will begin a much more visible transformation. But it is the third wave that will do it all. The third wave will involve the broader host communities, as the third wavers who have far more traction and gravitas in their communities mobilize their friends and their colleagues to engage Africa, their ancestral community. Already, transformation is happening in Africa for good. But that transformation may not be deep and strong enough until we add to it the power of the African generational waves. I'm Magnus Packle, and that's my view.